Billing is done in the Booking and Billings screen on the Billing tab. For the person that you're billing for, what you want to do is select that person first before you start trying to do the invoice billing. Once the person's name is up here and their ID is verified that it's correct, number 2, Ben Franklin, then you're ready to start doing billing. Billing is a two-part exercise where first you go into the equipment assignment screen on that tab and look at the items that you're billing for. Now it's all related to the current date that you're doing the billing for the items that are either being returned or you're billing as they're being rented at the counter. What you can do is create the invoice, or you can do it, if it's a prepaid, create it at the counter. If it's being returned and paid when it's returned, then you would see that and you would mark that so that it's in the notes. For example, pay on delivery, pay on return, and so forth as far as a note is concerned. For example, if it's delivered to the site, it may take a day or so to get it delivered to the site, so your assignment date and time should be the same as the date it's being delivered, not when the person made the deal at the counter. Okay, now that we're in the billing phase and we're actually going to either bill on the outtake or the return, once that is assessed, what you're going to do then is you're going to go ahead and do the billing on the billing tab. And it's quite easy, actually. Basically what you do, and this is one that was done prior, as you can see in here, there were items that were billed out in the past and the date that they were billed on. So all the items for the 23rd were invoiced. And if we're going to do a new date, say for example it's today on the 26th, we would go ahead and do that. Then we would go ahead and say, oh, for example, it's going to be a lawnmower. And if you notice when I bring this down that there's actually a rate that's attached, that's added to the end of the item at $12. So if it was $12, that's what you'd put in this space. So we put in $12. Then by looking back at the actual item and you look at the number of days on the equipment assignment, you would put in the number of days for the value of that item. Now in this particular case, I'm going to take this off the screen because I'm just showing you how to edit it. But we'll put in a 3-day assignment and see that it automatically calculates the cost for the 3 times 12. If you're going to add tax, if you have a tax that you add, you would add it here by picking it and it would automatically do the tax calculation. If that's not the correct tax and you need to edit that, you'll notice the underline on the tax rate will bring up this window and you can add a new tax rate here. Once you've added it by add a new record and putting the tax rate in, let's just do it. Let's do 0.07 for 0.7% tax or 7% tax. You can go ahead now and return to the billing screen, and you'll notice when you go into the billing screen, by the way, this changed by the date because it's organized by date. At the oldest go to the bottom and the newest go to the top. So let's go ahead and put a tax rate. Now you'll see that 7% is in there. It automatically calculates the tax, and then it'll take the line total and modify that, adding the tax to it in the line total. Then you would put the status in the invoice saying that this item is whatever. For example, customer picked up the item when he did the transaction. So we'll just put that in there for this particular one. Then you could add the next one. Now, depending on how many pieces of equipment, this might take a few seconds to do. For example, if on the 23rd there was a number of pieces of equipment, it would take maybe a couple of minutes to do this and the billing would have been completed. Now, just to show you how you would remove something if it was an error and you did not want to put that line item in, I would go up to the item I just did on 426. I'd come across, click on the green arrow, come to this record, and you'll see that's the item, verify it, our 3 days at $36. Go over to delete and delete that record. That would delete the record. Now you can return back to the billing, look at the billing invoice, and you'll see that it's disappeared. It's that simple. Do not try to delete the item in the portal itself. Always delete it from the individual portal record. And the reason for that is that if you try to delete it or were successful in deleting it here, it would not update the calculations in the portal record for the actual amount that was being billed, and therefore it would leave an outstanding balance that should not be in there. speaking of balances, as you add new items to a line, this is a running total at the top. So for example, it will calculate the sum of all tax, the sum of all items charged, and the total paid would be paid in the payment screen. We're not going to talk about that yet, but basically it would show a balance. That $36 I just added would have shown up here as, and actually $38, but would have showed up here as a $38 balance due. Then we'd go over to payment if we were going to take the payment, which we'll cover in the next tutorial, and we'd enter it into payment. Recall now, if you want to do a find on any one item or group of items, that you would do that in the portal records by using the find. And say, for example, you may want to group it by a day, and we already showed you how to do the formula for days. You could do it a range of days, or you can do it by the individual. You can even use the booking ID as the individual record, so to bring up all the items assigned to booking ID 2 for that customer. In addition to that, you can do special things, like you might want to go out and find everywhere where there's a note where something has to be delivered on a date range, and all those records would be brought up, and then you could page through them in this screen by going next or previous, or you can actually look at the billing listing or billing report, which will carry that find items so you can see them in the listing. That concludes this tutorial. If you have any questions, as always, I stated that if you're working on the server, make sure that you submit any record before you leave the screen, or you will get an error message saying that you did not do the transaction correctly. So this is on the server only. On the iPad or any other device not using a browser to the server, that would not be the case. Thank you for taking this tutorial.